Today we are going to be making Shiopan, which is like a mix between a croissant and a salty bread bun. So while we bake that, I'm going to talk about how I feel about the newest Bllk chapter. Bllk is a soccer anime and manga in which they take 300 of Japan's best high school strikers and they put them in this training facility in order to produce the best striker in the world, and also a Japan U20 team that can win the World Cup. And I've been following this soccer manga for a long time. This is going to be more of a commentary opinions-based video, but about a different topic, of course. But I'm excited to share my thoughts on it because I think that the newest chapter does give it's good for the development of the plot. There will be spoilers ahead, of course, so if you don't want to be spoiled, go read the manga. I read it on Weeb Central, but let's get into the video. Alright, so here I have all of the ingredients in the recipe. As you can see, it calls for bread flour and cake flour. I'm just going to use all-purpose because that's what I have right now. Some water, of course, some sugar. It has cold unsalted butter. I'm just going to be using for everything this is actually unsalted. This is unsalted. I do also have salted butter that I'm going to be using when I roll the actual buns. But that's good to know. So yeah, yeast, and then instead of the non-fat milk powder, I'm just going to be using buttermilk because I do not have non-fat milk powder and it is like the hardest thing to find in stores. So we have all ingredients. Let's start putting things into the KitchenAid. Also, the measuring cups I will be using are just a 1 cup, 250 milliliter, and a 1/3 cup, 80 milliliter. These, I don't know where they're from, but it's just easier to use 2 instead of taking out every single measuring cup. I do have little spoons. So here we have a 1 tablespoon all the way down to a 1/4 of a tablespoon. So that's some pretty good stuff. Now, let's actually put the stuff into this bowl.
This segment's kind of boring, so I'm just going to kind of sum up what I'm doing. I'm adding in the all-purpose flour, which is, in total should be 4.5 cups. I think I did add 3.5, so that's a little mess up. Added the water, sugar, salt, and the buttermilk.
Alright, so now we have all of the ingredients in here. As you can see, we have the flour, we have the salt, the sugar, the substitute for the milk powder, which was the buttermilk, and the yeast packet, and also I did put the water in. So now we're going to close this mixer, push that little tab down, and close this, making sure that the cover is on. Then you're going to start it on low until there's some shaggy little rags that form.
A few moments later.
Now you can see, as I lift this up, that this dough is in these really shaggy kind of dry forms, but they're still kind of wet. So once you're at this stage, you're going to add the unsalted butter. Mine requires for 3 tablespoons. Be very careful when you're using sharp objects. Now there's 2 things you can use to do this. I have a bench scraper. This one is from a brand called Figment I got at Target, or you could use a knife. This is a Farberware, but roughly I'm just going to start it here. So this section I'm not going to include. So I'm just going to make a decent line there, because that we're going to cut off. Next, basically 3 tablespoons is about roughly 75% of 1/4 cup. So I'm going to see, okay, so 75% would be about there. You can see that thin line, and I'll bring it up closer, but I'm going to make an indent there. as you can see, 1/4 cup, 75% of it. Now, I can also, let me shave off a tiny bit more than that, right in between these two defined lines. That's going to be about 75. Now, I'm going to open the butter very carefully, and I'm going to keep the marked side on the top. So, there we go. You can use a bench scraper to do this. I'm just going to use a knife. I'm going to keep it long ways, and I'm going to unfold all of the plastic. And you're just going to gently go straight down, and I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to go straight down and pull it out. And this hunk of butter is going to go into the mixture. I don't know what that black spot is, but it's going in the trash. Let me make sure there's no other. Okay, this butter looks like really nice. Like, I don't think it's going bad, but that was a little spooky. So this giant chunk of butter, which I am holding with my clean hands, is going to go right into the mixture. And so I'm just going to close this up, and we're going to go on, make sure that clicks. We're going to go on medium to high, and it will basically form a cohesive dough after a while. So let's turn this thing on. Now that dough has to mix for about 15 minutes, so we have some time to actually start diving into this match. So basically, in Bllk currently, there's the U20 World Cup arc. I'm going to be cutting some pieces of butter for the bread while I talk about this. The U20 World Cup arc has just started. Of course, Bllk beat, I think it was Nigeria, and then they had their match with France. And France is an amazing, crazy team. They have, of course, Julian Loki, which is one of the new Gen 11. In Bllk, the new Gen 11 is basically one of the 11 players selected by FIFA to represent the new greats of soccer. Essentially, they're like the goats of this series. Now, basically, what went down was...
Oh. Let me... Ignore the fact that I have like schoolboy-esque hair right now, but anyways, I realized I did not explain going through my footage like what actually happened in the match, so I'm gonna do that really fast. Basically, right now in the U20 World Cup arc, because it's starting, they're in the group stages, like all the teams are in the group stages, and Japan's in Group A, which was with Nigeria, England, and France. Basically, when you're in the group stage, it's kind of round robin-esque, so the top 2 teams from the group of 4 teams will move forward, and then like so on and so forth. So, of course, Japan won against Nigeria, lost against France, so they have to win against England. And essentially, people are saying that the France, loss, making Bllk lose against France was not a good plot decision by Kaneshiro. However, I beg to differ, so I'm just gonna jump right back into the video. Hope that made sense. Editor out.
Basically, the reason that I think that it is good the Bllk U20 got beaten by France is because the way it was set up narratively, if they just kept winning and winning and winning and winning, it would be boring. Because I feel like, especially in this match, there wasn't much player evolution. Now, of course, Isagi did evolve as a player when he was going to go one-on-one with Hugo. Hugo has this mentality to be like the second best, and Isagi just didn't want to accept that, because also I feel like Isagi as a character kind of hasn't accepted that he is not and I saw a comment about this, that he's not the strongest or the biggest or the best in that way, and you can take my word on this if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's what's different about him and Karasu, is that Karasu is completely understood who he is as a person, as an identity, but I feel like Isagi kind of does not have that, because that's kind of how evolution is a double-edged sword in a way, where he does know who he is and what he wants to be, but a lot of times in this manga, you see Isagi questioning himself and also like how he questioned Ego's like entire basically philosophy, because Ego's philosophy is that a striker is so selfish that he will fight until the end, and he will basically selfishly do things to pursue his own goals over the success of the team. Like, in this sense, that's why Bllk's so different, and it's not really about the team. It's so much more individually focused, I guess, in a way, which is strange to say, honestly. If everyone is so selfish to the point where their selfishness comes over the success of the team, like when Rin was basically going to get that steal Isagi's goal, but as both of them kicked the ball, ended up missing, it does kind of make you think, like, is Ego's philosophy truly kind of fail-proof? You also kind of start to think about whether Ego's philosophy can bode a lot of team success for the Japan national team, for the U20 team. Like, that selfishness can get in the way in such a thing. And I know Bllk is also, like, it teaches you how to, like, deconstruct yourself to follow your dreams and all, but if that deconstruction is too reckless, then it kind of ruins, I guess, like, the integrity of the philosophy, right? And Ego's, like, philosophy is radical for a reason. Like, there's a huge reason for that radicalization, because that can lead to a lot of change, but also, I feel like after this match, and when we go into the next chapter, a lot of people are going to greatly resent Isagi and Rin, even though they're both, like, the best players, just because that selfishness kind of takes over, like the selfishness to fulfill your own goals. Is there a point where that kind of needs to be the backseat in the goals, not really the goals, but yeah, the kind of the goals of, you know, how can we win this World Cup? Like, I feel like in the next chapter, it may be a filler chapter where we get to see what's happening with Group B or Side B and what's happening with Nagi, which I do hope we get one more chapter of clarity before we get to see, like, what's happening with Nagi and the others, but I feel like this kind of will lead to a change of mindset in all the boys, and also just, like, a change in pace, because they can learn from this, like, a lot, in a way. Are all 12 butter cubes for all 12 little balls. These are going to go in the fridge. They're mostly evenly cut. They're about a tablespoon each. If it's too much butter, it's too much butter. It'll be alright. I feel like when the selfishness of being a striker grows to a point, these boys will get so into each other, and it's kind of like the first match we saw Bllk coming full circle. To think of that, when there was Team Z and they were fighting against Team, I'm pretty sure it was Team W, when they were fighting against that team, and all of them were just going at it so much. There needs to be some kind of structure still. There needs to be some kind of boundary lines. I feel like from the beginning, especially, you know, looking at the Neo-Egoist League, in fact, little tangent I'm gonna go on here, that last match between not Manshine, Bastard Munich and PXG, that match, it was long, yes, but there was a lot of different developments in that match, right? And we did see kind of a farther extent to this selfishness and where it can go, but I feel like relating that match to this match or some of the other matches, there really wasn't that much development. I feel like Kaneshiro kind of purposefully made this loss go on really early, because truthfully, it is really hard to just be winning everything and try and win every single thing, and I feel like there was no way. And also, like, relating that match to the PXG match, Loki was clearly holding back, because Loki, it felt like he wasn't doing anything for, like, 99% of the match, besides that last goal. Felt like he wasn't doing anything. It felt like, especially Charles, I expected a little bit more from Charles because he's one of my faves. And I don't know, it just feels like a lot of the French players didn't do anything this match. And not only that, but also, like, we didn't see. We saw 3 players from the French team doing well. We saw Hugo, we saw Loki, and we saw Charles. And we didn't see any other players. Usually you'd see these kind of NPC players playing alongside, but it didn't feel that way. And it didn't really feel like an evolution. It kind of just felt like Isagi caught Hugo off guard, in a way. And also from the start, when they introduced kind of like, oh, this is France's like golden trio, it felt like they introduced it in a way where I felt like, oh, I feel like Bllk's gonna lose. In sports, it is not always winning, 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 winning. You know, it's very rare to have those periods of domination. You know, there's never gonna be another Michael Schumacher, another Lewis Hamilton, another Tiger Woods, you know, another Messi or Ronaldo. Like, those guys only come once in like a lifetime with generation of players, of soccer players, or not soccer players, just like any sports person, right?
Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if Kaneshiro kind of forced like a kind of period of domination with Bllk, even though there are very good players in Bllk, it would kind of feel false, and it wouldn't really feel like there would be a satisfying ending to Bllk if it ended after the U20 World Cup arc, let's just say. If they just kind of kept dominating and evolving, because you learn more from your mistakes than your successes, inevitably.
I genuinely feel like if Bllk lost the U20 World Cup, it would be good for the plot. I hope this is not the last Bllk arc, because I feel like these guys realistically are like so young, like 15 to like 20 basically. Now 20 or 15 or 19, I think. It's the main age range for all the Bllk players, but there's like so much more ahead of them, I feel like, and I don't want the manga to end just like after this arc. I feel like there's like more Kaneshiro is planning. I hope there's more he's planning. Alright, now we're gonna check on the dough, so let me turn this off. See if it passes the window pane test. This is kind of a weird angle to window pane test it from, but I feel like it's not passing the window pane. Oh, that kind of, my hand's covering it, but it kind of does pass the window pane test. I feel like there's some lumps and bumps that make it kind of not pass the window pane test. There you go. You can kind of see. I feel like it just needs a few more minutes of mixing. But however, if we do look, it is quite smooth. It's a little bit lumpy, a little more lumpy than I liked. It's supposed to be kind of completely smooth when I do that. This is going to get a few more minutes. I feel like ultimately Kaneshiro is going to make the Bllk like U20 team now like win the World Cup. Like, I feel like he's going to try. But if he does not, that could also be good for the plot if they have one really big loss. Like, if you learn to kind of use your losses as fuel, which is something I've been really bad at, personally. I kind of let my losses define me, but I feel like if the boys learn to not do that, and to keep pushing harder, not to the point where it gets unhealthy, of course. But I mean, look, they don't have the most healthy dynamics in there. Kind of crazy that they're all teenagers, but that's also something to think about. However, of course, there's so much to speculate. There's so much people are saying. I don't know exactly how, but I feel like Isagi is going to get very mad, or not only, well, definitely everyone's upset, but I feel like, besides from being upset, it's about how does Ego move forward with his philosophy, even though it just lost them the match. Rin was really the person that made them lose, kind of. The Rin slander is, I won't get too heavily into it, but it's definitely over the next few chapters, over the next segment of the Bllk manga, there's going to be a lot of Rin slander. People are saying Rin should be benched. People are saying Nagi should be back. People are saying a lot of things. Yeah, I hope we get some closure, and I hope we get some more seeing the boys fired up in a different way kind of thing. Because I feel like this is a great opportunity for them to pivot their goals and their training and their mindsets. I guess this is kind of Bluelock's Art of War related to the book title, because that book, it is so intrinsically psychologically related to Bluelock. Probably gonna make another video about that. Bluelock's Art of War is like, so just to give a little brief intro, Bluelock's Art of War is so brutalist, but it also does work very well in the way that it drives the characters to do really well and to push themselves like harder and harder and to kind of transform themselves as players. And that's what we've seen mainly with Isagi, honestly. Also, like, there's Chiguru's development, there's Nagi's development, Bachara. And Bachara's was, I feel like, is more kind of in the Neo-Egoist League round, or Neo-Egoist League arc. But mainly Isagi, of course, because he is the protagonist. We've seen that development with him and how he's kind of changed and molded himself in different ways. And that's like kind of, I feel like in a way when the Blue Lock players do that, or when they evolve, or when they have different auras, or like discover metavision and stuff like that, which I feel like everyone should not be able to have metavision, because now it's like, okay, whatever. But that is what makes the manga so special, is that you can approach the sport in so many different ways, genuinely, of soccer. And like the way that people have different mindsets, different backstories, and they all come together in one place to play the sport. It's also very beautiful. So the dough has just started proofing. This is the first proof, where you proof it until there's the ball of dough inside, but you proof it until it doubles in size. Now I'm going to sit and wait for this bread to finish proofing so we can start the second proof. We can shape them and start the second proof.
2,000 years later.
I let the bread proof overnight, so we shall see. So good. Now we're going to finish rolling them and shaping them. But also my voice is like a little downbeat because I'm not really feeling that well today. But we have 13 balls here, so we're going to start rolling and shaping all of these. And I have the butter sitting behind the camera. So going back to the topic of Blue Lock, I feel like in general, I watched a video earlier today actually, where someone was talking about how, or last night, how the series has kind of strayed away from everyone is a striker and everyone is like fighting to be the best striker, and because like people like Miko and like Gagamaru and Aryu, but then also like IQ, they've been put into like defensive roles. Like people have been put into different roles. A lot of people have been saying, and I was talking about this with my friend, that Isagi is kind of more like a midfielder than a striker. And it kind of feels like, even though there's like, oh, these cool matches and these things happening, the series has strayed away from, I guess, the original purpose of it. It does feel like there is straying away from the originality, not the originality of the plot necessarily. I guess the purpose of the plot, right? Because all these boys are just like trying to follow their soccer dreams. But, philosophically, there's a point where like you have to be able to stop. You have to like stop and think about what you're doing. Because if you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing yourself, it comes to a point, like it genuinely comes to a point, and that's like the main point I'm trying to make. And if the guys have bigger losses like this in the future, like it hopefully teaches them like how they're going to push it to move in a different direction. Like, I feel like hopefully after we get some clarity, we get to see the guys think in a different way and get fired up in a different way. Because it feels like it has been a teeny bit bland, I guess. Especially with, like, if we keep meeting these new rivals from other teams in the same way and, like, the same things keep happening, that is kind of boring. But I understand that, like, there's only so many things Kaneshiro can do. But there is a lot of, leeway with what he can do with the manga and the direction he can put it in. I'm honestly just kind of yapping at this point to try and get my point through. But I feel like I did that better last night when I was cutting the butter pieces. Alright, so here are all the dough balls. There's 12 of them. Now, 13 of them. I don't want them to be overtly big, like about this size. And these two are going to be combined for now, but I can always take off dough. So I'm going to finish rolling all these out, and then I'm going to start shaping them. Now that we've shaped the balls, let's get back to the recipe bit. I'm going to move them all back, because I have a lot of space to knead. We'll put some flour on the bench. Now we're going to roll this out nice and fairly long. We're going to start flattening it. You want to make sure that it's not paper thin, but it's pretty thin. It would be easier to use a rolling pin, however, I'm too lazy to just get up and grab one. Alright, so this is about the thickness, this thick, roughly, between my fingers. Now, once you do that, you're going to grab your butter. You're going to put that square at the top, and you're going to take the edge and you're going to fold it over. You want to start from the large end, and you want to roll it all the way to the small end, but as you roll, you want to stretch it. The butter's kind of melting, but you're going to push. See where my fingers are where the dough is? You're going to pull it back, and then you're going to roll it. I kind of smashed the butter there. You're going to pull it back and roll it. Now, yours will probably look nicer than mine if you're following along with the recipe part of this, and you should have this nice croissant looking shape that you can put on your little tray. Back to the Bllk stuff. This is going to be cut up in a bunch of different ways, but I feel like the way Kaneshiro has set up the story is that it's supposed to be flawed. Like, you're supposed to be able to find things in it that does not work, right? Because that's just, things can't truly be completely perfect, naturally, intrinsically. And so, it's good that there are, again, losses and being able to disprove things that other people are saying, because then that creates, like, new ideas and, like, new works. And a lot of philosophy can tie into that, of course. I feel like loss in general, even though it's treated like basically life or death, right? But it's kind of gonna force the boys to step back and rethink, I guess, who they are and how they can accomplish the goals they want to accomplish, because it's clear that the current formula Ego wants them to think is not going to work especially against stronger teams, because the structure of it, even though the team, like, has structure, admittedly, it all has structure, but if it kind of becomes violent in a way when they're all just going for the ball. And I feel like Rin, especially in his destroyer mode, because he just thinks that, like, nobody, like, should care about him, nobody should be with him, because he wants to do it on his own. And in a way, like, he can try, but also, like, soccer is still a team sport, even though this manga treats it as so individualistic. But also, this could be an opportunity to reveal, like, some of Ego's backstory. and that would also be nice to see. Ego is just a very interesting person. Like, we know he was Noah's rival back when he played professionally, but we don't know anything about him besides that. And I don't know, just kind of intriguing. Very intriguing. Because they clearly, Noah and him clearly have, like, some kind of history together. But, whatevs. Like, honestly, at this point, it is what it is. But also, I feel like, in a way, this could divide the team. It's kind of like an assassination classroom, which is kind of crazy to relate Bllk to that, but like in assassination classroom, how Nagisa and Karma were fighting on like if they have to kill Koro Sensei at the end, and they had that whole like kind of mini arc about that, I guess. Some people might think that like, oh, we have to go on this way because Ego is like the person that, taught us these things and like gave us these opportunities, but other people may be like, why are we even doing this if it just caused us to lose the match? And it's not like they're in a knockout round and they're out, but if that kind of situation with a Rin and Isagi or Rin and someone else, or someone else like Cheetah or something happens again, and they're in a knockout stage and that's why they lose, that is going to make all of them really, really frustrated. And just like, you just feel like all the hard work that you did just amounted to nothing. If this is the last arc, then I hope there's a lot more development, but I feel like it's not, because maybe, like, the NEL offers still stand. So, hopefully, like, we see them either going to other teams, or, like, maybe continuing to play Japan, like, professionally. Like, really, we don't really know. There's so many, like, what ifs, If right, if my mom had Bllk, she'd be my dad. But yeah, everyone in the next chapter, I feel like, is gonna be either really, really angry or completely divided. I don't know how Ego is gonna try back out of this one. Bro, the worst part about that chapter is that Henri looked so crushed. And Henri's like my girl. One of the only females, besides like the parents, of course, besides Isagi's mom and like Bachira's mom, but like the only character that's like a female and working for this. Like, Henri started Bllk. We would not have Bllk without Henri, right? Bro, she looks so crushed. She looked so freaking crushed. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. But yeah, I don't think this match was necessarily the most peak because I feel like there wasn't that much development in it. Like, it felt like a standard Bllk match. Like, probably like, I'd give it an A tier, honestly. But like, also, I feel like if it's like the same format, kind of like in the NEL, where that was kind of dragged out a little bit at least, it does get kind of boring. It'll be alright. With Bllk, there's also this idea of like delayed gratification in sports, or just honestly in life in general. Like, these boys have worked so hard because they want to achieve their goals, but I feel like this kind of big mistake, or kind of losing this match, or not leaving any room for this match, like leaving any room to win, I guess, because Loki kind of came in at the last second, but he did win it. That can also create like a mental barrier, a mental block, like if they keep letting that mistake get to them, which something that a lot of like young athletes I know do, like especially like whether that's like in motorsport or like in golf and stuff. Like, sports are so mental that like if you let your mistakes kind of define you, then that can also bring team morale really, really down for them. I know everyone's going to be angry. I'll keep saying this. There's probably going to be like a whole brawl, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a locker room brawl. Like literally people like almost punching each other, or like kind of like how we saw with Shio and Bachiro, like getting ready to square up. But yeah, really nice. These ones are much smaller, like all of these on this side. These ones are small, but they're like a little bigger. They're more dough. This one is my favorite. That one's cute. So we have to let them rise. Let me actually open the recipe until it doubles in size. We're gonna let it rise until it doubles in size. And then I'm gonna preheat the oven after, because I don't want to preheat it now, even though there isn't that much stuff in it. So I'm gonna cover these with a towel. Just gonna use this red towel. These are just gonna sit on the counter for a while. I'm going to clean up, put like all the oil stuff away. Speaking of, let me just do that right now.
Hello, editor here. I didn't have any footage past this, so I'm just going to give a quick little wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this video and all my little takes about what's happening in Bllk right now. I know that by now, chapter 348 has come out, and chapter 348 is about Side B and Nagi. I think I put a little note in the video earlier about that. However, it's still a pretty good chapter, gives a lot of good context. The bread buns did turn out pretty well, probably because I used buttermilk instead of milk powder, and I put them in the oven for too long, and I didn't put oil on the top before I put them in the oven. They turned out a little bit hard on the outside, but they're still pretty good. So yeah, if you watch this video all the way to the end, I hope that you enjoy. Consider checking out some of my other content, and have a great day or night wherever you are. Toodles!